Everybody, and thanks for joining our weekly podcast. I'm Robin Lewis, founder and CEO of the Robin Report, which, by the way, I hasten to add that it's much more than just a daily report. It really is a knowledge platform from which we communicate thought leadership on various strategic topics through our reports, yes, but also these podcasts, also webinars, and hopefully soon live events. Anyway, and along with our chief strategist, Shelley Cohan, also, by the way, a professor at FIT and Syracuse University, we welcome you to our conversation on the topic of, and this is a big one, Mr. Smalls is now Mr. Big, and is he resurrecting unions? And of course, symbolically, so to speak. And Shelley, this is an incredibly timely and powerful topic today, which you, in fact, may have scooped everybody in your article in Forbes last week, titled, Amazon Union Vote is a Big Win for Labor Unions, which was followed by major articles in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and a whole range of broadcast and major publications. And Mr. Smalls is being interviewed all over the place.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, it's crazy. And I guess he kind of got onto the tipping point earlier than a lot of other people. So that's why we kind of used him here. Anyway, and today, by the way, we are very fortunate to be joined by Bert Kamen, who has on the ground real experience with unions and labor relations, and specifically in the retail space. Bert, you've been in human resources for decades, worked in labor relations for over 20 years, and you also have a degree in labor relations. Your work as a senior labor relations VP at Macy's and Bloomingdale's, along with some work at Amazon, really does make you a perfect fit for our conversation today. And as I said, we are very fortunate to have you. And indeed, we're honored to have you with us.
Well, thank you, Shelley. Thank you, Robin, both of you. It's an honor and a compliment, first of all, to go through my work history and speak of it that highly. It's been a great career. I've been very, very fortunate, surrounded by really good people who showed me the way, and worked with both a lot of really good executives at some fantastic companies, Amazon and particularly Federated and Macy's department stores.
Yeah.
And then in addition to that, there were a lot of union leaders that I worked with that helped me understand this business. So I'd be more than happy to take a few minutes here to try and answer some questions and talk through the evolving labor market and how exciting it's going to be for the next few years.
Oh boy, yeah.
These unions try and figure out what they want to do and how retailers try and figure out how to run their businesses competitively.
So let's dive right in. I mean, our audience is going to be, really going to want to hear what you have to say. So, but Shelley, why don't you kick us off with the facts of what Mr. Smalls did to succeed in winning the union vote, and then we can start discussing these major issues and the impact on the retail landscape.
Sure. So Christian Smalls, who was a former Amazon employee, he's the one that started the union, which is currently called the Amazon Labor Union. He's also the president. He was actually fired by the company for leading a walkout of workers back in March of 2020 as a protest for unsafe working conditions during the pandemic. So this was, of course, in the warehouse that was built over in Queens, New York, called JFK 8, which opened in September of 2018. And the act, or the walkout by the workers, was actually quite small, but Amazon's response to the walkout is what really made this small act by one disgruntled employee so pivotal in the drive to unionize the warehouse.
Yeah. It's very interesting, that story. I mean, it's amazing. So Bert, based on what you know about this case, coupled with your extensive knowledge on the subject today, is Mr. Small's move against, the second largest retailer in the world, kind of David against Goliath. In other words, is his move kind of the beginning of a nationwide resurrection of unions? And why now?
Well, it certainly has all the makings and all the potential to be that way. And a large part of it has to do with a couple different things. The first is the bigger picture is how management responds. The employees, most employees wake up in the morning and really want to come to work, do a good job, go home. And they want to have that opportunity to do that without a whole lot of barriers. And the biggest barrier is management. And when management doesn't pay attention, could be the safety issues like Shelley made reference to, although my experience at Amazon, their safety protocols and procedures were some of the highest that I ever experienced, but that they weren't perfect. So the first thing is you have to ensure that we have a safe work environment. If management wasn't responsive to that, absolutely, the employees are empowered and unions thrive on that. And then the next bigger thing, which really concerns me or troubles me, is how Amazon and management responded to this. Because, here's this big company and they discipline and ultimately terminate. And at one point, apparently have this gentleman arrested. Well, in this day and age, working backwards, calling the authorities and having this big company arrest an individual, you're making him into a martyr, a victim. And it really puts the company in a very difficult position because regardless of what he did right or wrong, the employees are going to rally around that. And it's very difficult to overcome that. And it puts that much pressure on managing the rest of the workforce because they think, when's it going to happen to me? So you're absolutely right. There's David and here's Goliath. And everybody rallies around him because they think if they did that to him, when are they going to do it to me?
Boy, it's fascinating. It really is a fascinating story. And on another note, Bert, since there are 11.3 million jobs that need to be fulfilled in the United States, and that's up 30% from 2021. And the retail trade needs to fill over 1.1 million of those jobs. This gives power to the worker, does it not? Which Mr. Small certainly capitalized on. So is this the tipping point, not just because of Smalls, but it's kind of happening around, Starbucks and so forth. So is it the tipping point when workers rise up?
Boy, and there again, it'll be really interesting to see how the retailers respond, regardless if it's Starbucks or an Amazon or just a traditional retailer, because it's really about, again, first of all, the almighty dollar, compensation. We've got to compensate fairly and competitively and provide competitive benefits, because if you don't, people are not going to vote. That's how they vote. They vote with their feet. And if they're not making the money and the benefits, then they're never going to come to you. So the market is going to establish that. That's the first thing. But money is not everything. It's about the experience. And if we're not treating people fairly and with dignity and respect, then you're never going to keep them. So in order for us to get those million jobs in a very difficult competitive economy where we now have the power of the internet to shop from home, the retailers have to figure out a way to bring people in. And you have to have motivated, well-compensated, happy, satisfied employees. And the employees have to be in a job where they feel that they're learning, growing, and developing. There's potential. They have to be treated fairly by their managers. If you don't have those three components, in my experience, you absolutely you empower the employees, and many employees aren't leaders, and that's where the unions come in to be the voice, and the voice of fairness, and the voice to say, Robin, I can get you that money. Robin, I can take care of that manager. Robin, I can take care of this for you. That's why you're absolutely right. If we're not paying attention to these fundamentals, the worker will empower and the union will seize this opportunity.
Yeah, interesting. Back when the Amazon warehouse opened, I guess it was almost 4 years ago, the retail wholesale and department store union, which has been around for 80 years, announced a very bold goal, and that was to turn JFK 8 into the first organized Amazon warehouse in the country. But, they were unsuccessful at that point. So how does a person like Smalls, with no background in unionization, no background in HR, and by the way, I guess he was an ex-rapper, do the one thing that an established union organization could not do?
Well, let me jump in here too, just to kind of add to this a little bit. So the union drive was really run in what I would call a more contemporary manner. So using social media, TikTok videos, Twitter, alongside with inside workers, so workers inside that warehouse that are really boosting union messaging. So in more traditional union drives from established union organizations, the union representatives and professional organizers are not allowed on the premises to campaign. But in the case of the Amazon Labor Union Drive, many campaigners actually worked in the warehouse. So Bert, what has changed in terms of union drives, maybe both from a management and an employee perspective?
I could talk for hours on this, both from three different perspectives. First of all, the first two, union organizing happens in one of two ways, from the outside in or from the inside out. From the outside in, and that's the most traditional you're familiar with, is where the union comes in and exploits, and that's because they have access. In a traditional department store facility, they can come through the front door, walk the floors, and they have access to the employees. That's traditional. We're not there anymore, and particularly in Amazon, where it comes from the inside out. And a couple things, and you are so spot on with the use of social media and TikTok and those types of things. So for example, without going into too much detail about a fulfillment center, I've worked in and was responsible for all of them on the East Coast for the period of time I was at Amazon. They're very, very complex environments. They work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And you have to have a network in order to be able to reach the thousands and thousands of people that are there. So the first thing, it sounds like that happened, don't have firsthand knowledge, I'm piecing together from the media like many other people, is the primary issues around safety and treatment and management and fairness. And those are rallying, but with the videos that came out from these behaviors of apparently apprehending this individual and intimidating the individual in the building, that is the rallying cry. And that stuff circulates so fast anymore on the internet, and it's so easy. That's when you build the momentum right there. And if in fact they have video, which I have not seen, of him being apprehended by the police or even worse, security, either way, that the employees are going to get away from management and rally quickly. And keep in mind, only a few people witnessed it. The rest of the people probably heard it secondhand or third hand, and we know how the telephone game goes. So he probably was able to build momentum pretty quickly. And if he's got the personality, which a lot of these guys are really personable, people will say, you know what, I will give you a chance. And that's what they've done. So it'll be fascinating to see, because the first thing is getting them to vote, which he's successfully done. The next thing, which Starbucks and Amazon have to get through, and this union in particular, is negotiating a contract. That's the next really big hurdle. It's one thing to win the election. Now you got to win a contract. And their pay is extremely, extremely high. Their benefits are very comprehensive. So the question is, what is the union going to do for them? What can the union really achieve through negotiations?
Really interesting. I also heard, and you can probably validate this, I heard that a union contract on average takes over 400 days to actually negotiate and go back and forth on. Is that kind of in the ballpark?
Yeah, and that's gonna be super conservative here, because they have so many job classifications within a film. If you think about all the job classifications they'll have to negotiate for, they're pickers, they're packers, they're stowers, they're loaders, they're unloaders, they're wrappers. If they may have a a book production facility in there, and then they have specialty jobs. I don't know who all is in the bargaining unit that is in that they voted on it. There could be IT people in there. So all those, and I just went through those very quickly, that could be 10 or 12 job classifications.
Wow.
So it's huge how much they're going to have to negotiate. So to get this contract in 400 days, I think that's generous.
Wow. That's a long time. Well, I also heard that worker safety was obviously a big concern specific to the warehouse over in Queens, New York. And I read that a year after the Amazon warehouse opened, that it had OSHA incident rate. That's how many incidents are reported. Their OSHA incident rate was 15.2. And that's based on the number of injuries or illnesses occurring over the number of hours worked by employees. Well, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the New York City or New York State OSHA rate is 2.2. The US is at 2.9, retail trades at 3.1, and warehouse storage in particular across the nation is at 5. This was for 2020. So this is really 3 times the rate at this one facility. But the other area that I really want to get your perspective on is this idea of productivity. So not just in the Amazon case, but in the whole retail trade industry. You know, Amazon is widely known for tracking productivity, down to the second. And this was a major complaint with the warehouse workers, and yes, management has to track productivity to optimize the payroll. It's the largest contributor to operating expense. But at what point does managing productivity kind of cross the line with employees?
Boy, the productivity system at Amazon is extremely complicated, and I could talk about it. And I'm not sure how it's changed since I left there, but I do know it was a rub back when I worked there. So there is that. And then there's the question, which I would like to explore if I would ever get the opportunity, is it the productivity or the disciplinary that's assigned to the productivity? And that's the biggest hurdle right there, because it really comes back to fairness and the perception of fairness. And so everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, management understands the importance of productivity and performance. The employees don't like it because it's very demanding. So the question is, which is more important, and where's the opportunity to reach an agreement? I don't believe you're going to be able to change the company's productivity standards, because that's where the money comes from. If you want us to give you a little break on how we discipline you, that's probably the opportunity here. And that's probably what really rubs the employees the most, is the threat of discipline.
Very interesting. So here's kind of what I don't understand. And while I do have a background in human resources, I'm certainly not an expert that you are, for sure. You're legendary in your labor relations knowledge. And I think you were trained by one of the best, Joe Bella, I might add. But, companies spend millions to keep unionization out of its environment. And it was reported by the New York Times that Amazon spent more than $4.3 million just on anti-union consultants nationwide last year. This is according to federal filings.
Amazing.
So
yeah.
You have this employee who brings up safety concerns, and admittedly, Amazon understands it's had some unsafe working conditions. We know this as they continue to spend millions of dollars to fix the issues in the warehouse. So when the employee decides to stage a walkout, Amazon fires him? I'm no labor expert, but it appears that firing Smalls and leaving him no choice was motivation for him to really take action, and namely create a union. So not to mention, as you mentioned earlier, but not to mention Smalls gets arrested for trespassing this past February when he was bringing lunch to a break room. Yikes!
Incredible.
The arrests were videotaped. They were put on TikTok. How should management be handling these issues of worker safety, complaints, productivity measurements? Are these hard tactics that Amazon chose to employ the right way to go in this environment with employees on edge about health and safety coming off the pandemic, not to mention the extreme labor shortages, as Robin mentioned?
I think the first thing you have to do is empathy. Management has to have empathy, whether you believe or you don't believe where the employees are coming from. From the employee's perspective, this is important. And if in fact, and this is a snowball effect, first of all, the safety numbers that you're quoting are absolutely, without getting the perspective of where they were and everything behind them, at 3 times the average, there's a problem. And once you have those problems, you have to have the empathy, and we have to work with the employees to understand and partner with them. Because if you don't, this is what happens. They will go and get a union. Employees will give you an opportunity to correct. Employees will give you an opportunity to fix. But if their concerns, if their pleas, if their cries for help go unanswered, they will have to go to a third party, and it's typically a union. The next thing is, how does the company respond? Many senior executives don't have experience with interacting with unions, and they feel the pressure of social media, they feel the pressure of traditional media, and they lose focus on how to communicate and empathize with the employees and work to find resolutions. And so they make what appear to be knee-jerk reactions where you make it worse by, again, by playing in there. Here's an individual, brings in lunch. What's the harm of lunch? How many people can he feed? How long is he going to be there? How much damage can he really do? How disruptive? Not that if you let him go, it's fine. And as long as he's not being disruptive, it's not a big deal. Then when he's done, we separate. We talk about what policies and procedures were violated and how we want to go about it in the future so that a non-employee doesn't get in here. But we don't play into it by apprehending them or using force or alienating more people. It's having understanding for why this was important, showing the empathy and finding a solution. People respect that. People don't respect a big company, Goliath, using force on David that wasn't necessary.
Those are great points, Bert, which obviously can prevent a lot of conflict. As Shelley earlier touched on the fact that we are living in a totally different time with technologies and communication capabilities not even known about back in the mid-20th century. I mean, get this. I mean, the Amazon labor union under Smalls spent $120,000 overall, raised through GoFundMe. Now, which most people have never even heard of. So according to Mr. Smalls, and as Shelley said, Amazon spent more than $4.3 million just on anti-union consultants nationwide last year, according to federal filings. So in the future, with workers having all the power, and now with the communications tools to come together in kind of a nanosecond, I do believe unions will continue to grow. However, obviously in different ways. Yet the money companies are spending to keep unionization out, especially in retail, does seem to be working. I mean, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, workers in unions is currently at 10.3%, and that's down from 10.8% in 2020.
Yeah, Robin, you're going to love this stat. So there's been a decline in workers, but get this. When I started in the industry in 1983, that's when I first started in the industry, the union membership rate, so the number of workers that are union affiliated, was 20% in 1983.
Oh.
Now it's 10%, so it's almost cut in half.
Yeah.
So, Bert, what can we expect over the next few years in terms of the growth of unions in retail, with fewer jobs, employees more concerned about their health and well-being, becoming more demanding? Is this kind of an upward trend? I mean, if companies treat employees well, look out for their needs, make sure environments are safe and enjoyable, are unions really necessary?
Well, This is we can talk on this for hours. This is a fascinating question because in my years, I've dealt with a lot of really professional and smart union organizers who get it and they understand being a business person. But the reality of it is, unions are not going to go anywhere, and they're just like every other profession. They're good ones and they're bad ones. So that's the first baseline. Unions are a business and they do represent a sizable portion of our workforce, and they are in a prime position, if they're smart about it, to increase their membership and increase penetration because of how precarious our economy is for the foreseeable future on everything. Now, the flip side of that is management, if they're willing to make the investment, has the opportunity to maintain a non-union, union-free work environment by doing the fundamentals. And that's the first thing. Happy employees don't unionize. It's very simple. Happy employees don't need a third-party representative. And so the essential thing anywhere, particularly in retail, who's going to be under so much pressure in the future as this end of our economy, the retail economy, evolves and changes. But you have to make the time to train our managers to make sure that we understand our employees and we're treating them fairly, with dignity, with respect, and creating work environments that are engaging and developing and growing. And finally, it's all about, again, compensation and benefits, because when they get up in the morning, the first thing people are thinking about are, how do I provide for my family? How do I fulfill my responsibilities? And if they're not doing that, if we don't have the money, we don't have the benefits, and I'm going to work for an ogre, they're going to either A, walk with their feet, which we can't afford, or they're going to get somebody to represent them. So we have to make the investment in a good, healthy, engaged work environment and workforce.
Well, Bert, there's another thing that I believe has been a growing pain point on a real macro level, called this income gap. This has been going on for some time. I read an astonishing metric that real wages for management rose 900% over the past 40 years, while workers increased a mere 12%. We do know a lot of retailers are trying to get ahead of this potential. Even Amazon, as you better know than I, have raised their hourly rates and have added benefits on to a lot of different things, as has Walmart and others, along with a whole bunch of benefits. So what do you think of that?
Well, oh man, this is difficult. Money, and we have to pay competitively, or you're not going to recruit the right people, the right talent, the right caliber people to perform the jobs. We're going to have fewer of them, and they're going to be more complicated. In other words, the technology and the sophistication of the tools that people have to use to perform these jobs at every level of retail is going to go up. So in order to have the right caliber person to fulfill these expectations, the compensation is simply going to have to go up. Now, the extracurricular factors right now of food and the food prices, the food shortages, and the rising prices of energy are doubling down on this, because the wage increases that they wanted to make before to remain competitive and recruit the people that they need is still trailing the impact of these economic forces, food shortages, inflation around energy sources. But the short answer to your question is yes. We're not going to bridge the gap to 900% or whatever that is, because it's probably a legitimate number. But we do have to bridge the gap to make sure that people are able to fulfill their essential needs around providing for their families.
Yeah. Well put, Bert. And another big picture thought occurred to me. And whether or not Mr. Smalls for Amazon or Starbucks, Apple, REI, among others, whether they all are triggering a new era of unions, one thing is obvious, to me at least. I think it will literally be a new and different era, right? Based on not only the last century, three major reasons for workers of wages, one, benefits, two, and working conditions. In this new world where we have witnessed the power of protesters in the streets and the power of individuals using technology, as Mr. Smalls did, to go viral, so to speak, and with workers whose demands go way beyond just those three last century needs, to a set of values like diversity, equality, and inclusion. And yes, even environmental sustainability and community concerns. I don't know how much of that stuff is going to work its way into this whole issue about unions or not unions, but I do think consumers have evolved with a whole new set of values. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's a new world and a new tech era and a new era of unions. I do think we're just at the beginning. So, Bert, I want to thank you so much again. You added some incredibly prescient ideas and obviously great wisdom to our conversation. So I know our audience will have learned a lot just as I have. So thank you very much again.
Well, thank you, Shelley and Robin. Thank you both for the opportunity. Again, it's always fun to participate. I hope this is helpful and beneficial, and I wish great success to everybody out here.
Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. For our listeners, you can find more of our podcasts on Apple, Spotify, Buzzsprout.com, and the book RobinReport.com. You can look for us on YouTube. We broadcast all of our podcasts on YouTube now. And please follow us on social media, link in with us, follow us on Twitter for the latest thoughts about the industry.
And one last request. Every week I ask the audience if there is anything, any topic that they would, or you would like Shelley and I to cover. Please email me at robin@therobinreport.com. And thank you very much again.